Thank you very much. It's an honor for me to be here with this distinguished group committed to this organization, an amazing organization that has done such good things, great description of the kinds of things that are going on right now in Ukraine by both the school as well as the alumni and the students. So I'm honored to be here. And I'm here to express my support for UCU and all that it's doing, but also to express support for Ukraine, not speaking for the U.S. government, but I talk to the U.S. government a lot, and I can say that the United States is strongly supportive of Ukraine, is supportive of victory in Ukraine, and this will continue. This will persist. This will continue until it is finished. So this is a strong support that I think you're going to get from the United States, and I will talk a little bit more about that. Why? Americans are horrified. Americans are horrified at what the Russians are doing in Ukraine. Like Tim Snyder, and like many people in this room. I was in Ukraine in September, went to Bucha and Irpin, and I was horrified. Americans are horrified at what the Russians are doing in this war. We can see what the Russians are about. We can see the killings. The torture, the rapes. We can see the Russians now going after Ukrainian civilians, civilian institutions, energy, heat, water, winter. Everybody in this room knows what winter is like in Ukraine. And the Russians cynically, cruelly, intentionally going after civilian targets, civilians' homes, as they prepare for winter. So the United States sees this. Americans see this. And that's why there is this support that will continue. We know that the Russians don't stop when they take over someplace. We know that the Russians do not stop. We look at the history. Ukrainians know the history of Russia much better than Americans do. And Ukrainians, like other East Europeans, know what the Russians are about over 300 years. This is not something that's just under Mr. Putin, as we were just talking on the table. This is something that the East Europeans, once they were allowed to, moved to NATO. Why? Because they knew what the history of Russia was and what the threat to them was. This threat that the Russians pose to Europe is what the Ukrainians are fighting. The Ukrainians are fighting on behalf of Europe, fighting on behalf of the United States, fighting on behalf of values that we hold dear. Tim Snyder talked about freedom. The Ukrainians are fighting for their own freedom, and they're fighting for ours. And we know that that has to be done. That has to be done. And that the support that we provide to the Ukrainians is in that vein. That's what its purpose is. We also know that we have to support the Ukrainians because freedom, individual rights, sovereignty, democratic values don't come themselves. They don't arrive themselves. Without a struggle, without a force, without pushing, without a serious struggle to defend these values, they could be lost. And we could see the danger of being lost in Ukraine, which is why the strength of and the valor of and the courage of Ukrainians is so important, and it's why the United States and NATO and much of the world is supporting Ukraine. It's that commitment It's that commitment that we see among the Ukrainians in the first instance that we have to support, that we are going to continue to support. The United States recognizes that there are other challenges in the world. We've talked a little bit about China. China is the long-term challenge. But Russia, in my view, and in view of many people, Russia is the acute challenge. It's the acute threat. Russians are killing Ukrainians. Russians are killing people, individuals. We see that every day. The Russians are the threat that we need to fight and defend against right now. And that is why, again, we are supporting Ukraine in this fight. Ukraine is defending us and defending Europe. And that's why I believe that the United States will continue to support that. With our support, Ukraine is winning on the battlefield. Ukraine is winning. We saw this around Kyiv at the beginning of the war. We saw the Russians trying to come down, and Tim Snyder talked about this, trying to come down to somehow get rid of President Zelensky. They failed. The Ukrainian military pushed them back. The Ukrainian military pushed them back Kharkiv, Izum, Liman. We see the Ukrainian military, amazing success. Ukraine is winning on the battlefield. Yes, the U.S. support, U.S. supply, U.S. weapons, ammunition, that helps. But the real fighting, the real reason that Ukraine is winning on the battlefield is because of Ukrainian courage and Ukrainian bravery. And we have a representative here in the room of that, in Roman. So that inspires Americans. That inspires Americans to continue to support. We have, everybody in this room knows we have an election coming up soon, Tuesday. Many people probably already voted. I voted last week. Many people, we're talking, there's concerns about, well, what happens after the election? My view is that that support that I just described and the reasons for that support that I just described continue. That support will continue after these elections. Why? Because the United States, Americans, see what I've been saying, see what you've been seeing, see the success of Ukrainians on the battlefield, see the valor, see the courage, see the winning. Ukraine is winning on the battlefield, will continue to do that. The bipartisan support for Ukraine has been there through the decades of Ukrainian independence. It has been there from the Republican side and the Democratic side. It's been there from administration after administration, Republicans and Democrats, House and Senate, administration and Congress. It's been there and that will continue. I'm absolutely convinced that that will continue. Yes, we've seen talk a little bit from the left and a little bit from the right, but the vast majority of Americans and the vast majority of the Congress now supports. We can see the votes that happen every time there's a vote for support. It passes overwhelmingly. That will continue. That will continue. I am absolutely convinced. So that brings me then to the reason that we are here on the Ukrainian Catholic University to support them. UCU is part of this valor, is part of this fight, is part of this defense, is part of this success. It's the passion that the graduates show and that the faculty shows. It's the deeds. It's not just in the classroom. It's the deeds on the battlefield that we see. It is success on the battlefield, success of the graduates, and it's the commitment. And it's that commitment that we're here to support here today. I'm very pleased to be able to be part of that. I encourage you to show that commitment and show that support. And I thank you all very much for being here.